Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Lewis. This is the Saku-san channel. Now for those who are new to the channel and to myself, first of all, welcome. Glad that you've taken the time to have a look at this video. But just to give you a gist of what goes on here, I'm just like everybody else in terms of purchasing vinyl. I go to various record shops. I do the online stuff as well. I'm predominantly interested in jazz vinyl, and these videos that I've been putting out are an expression of my taste, basically what I find interesting in jazz. Now you may find that you and our tastes overlap. But what I'm trying to do with this particular channel is there's tens of jazz vinyl content creators out there on YouTube who do a really good job, and they show you stuff which is either been released or will be released in the near future from the big publishing houses. That's what a lot of YouTubers do, and it's a fantastic service. I'm slightly different in that my collection, hence behind me, some of it, it's not necessarily the jazz that everybody else is talking about or puts in their top 30 albums type thing. I'm cut from a different cloth in that respect. So hopefully what I'm going to show you today, I've got a number of albums to go through with you. Hopefully you'll find, well, what I'm trying to do is give you some idea of what jazz is out there outside of like the mainstream publishing houses in jazz. There's so much other flavors to jazz out there which don't get talked about, and that's where my interest lies. So do be patient with me. Please understand that I am not trying to, it's deliberate. I'm not trying to do what everybody else does. And this is part of who I am and part of my taste as well in jazz, that I just go off in my own direction. I'd like for you to join me on this journey. Hopefully there's going to be, 1, 2, 3 items that, once you've heard them, you think to yourself, well, I want that in my collection as well. So this is what the aim is. Hopefully I can fulfill that. In the description area down below, I'm going to leave links to at least one track from each of these albums. It may be the case that I will have to leave a link to the entire album, which is not a bad thing. If that is the case, I will try and give you a heads up about the individual track I think you should listen to from that album to give you an idea, and then you can listen to the rest. For those items where I'm only providing one track, again, you'll have to do your research, and if you do like that track, do your research, listen to the rest of the album, see if you like it, see if it fits in your collection. So we've got, well, I'm quite happy to announce we've got 10 jazz albums to go through with you today. I'm hoping that 2 or 3 is going to wet your whistle and help you make an informed decision about what you like and what you don't like in jazz. So I've got extensive notes, I've got my notepad. We're going to make a start. It's 10 jazz vinyl albums. Let's get going. Yeah. So the first album today is a 1964 release. It's by a German saxophonist and arranger by the name of Yoki Fren, and the album's entitled Yoki Jazz. Let me show you the cover. Yeah, I like that cover. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. Inside cover, so you can have a look. And that is the reverse. Okay, my thoughts on this particular album. Please bear in mind that I've probably listened you know, last time I listened to these albums were a couple of weeks ago, so I've had to write notes in order to remember what I thought about each album. So if you want a brief sense of what this album's about, it's contemporary jazz with it's got instances of hard and post-bop as well as modal jazz. So my comments are as follows. Everything is handled with a light touch. It's a thoroughly enjoyable jazz album. A bit light on original compositions, but who cares when it's this good? This album took me by surprise, I must admit. There's sometimes when I get into like a purchasing frenzy, or my desire to purchase a jazz album gets frustrated because there's nothing out there that I actually want. There's not to say there's nothing out there, but it's what I want. And I'd say, you know, up in the first quarter of 2024 has been really quite slow in terms of what I like in jazz being available on the open market. But I was really glad to get my hands on this particular album. It fits in lovely in my collection. I'm just really pleased as punch. It ticks a lot of my boxes. It's got the modal sound pretty much. It's by an artist who's not, obviously known, but not revered in, you know, like in the top echelon of jazz. But this material exists, and I think it's fantastic. The track that I'm probably going to leave a link to would be the track, the Caribbean Ringo. Yeah, an enchanting track. It's just like, it's that kind of thing. So I'm going to leave a link down below so you can hear it for yourself. My further comments were a deceptively accomplished piece, easy to overlook the quality on show. Yeah, and I think I just kept reiterating how good the actual album is, not by way of originality, but the musicianship, the tone of the album, the consistency of the album in terms of quality for each track. Yeah, I just got to give it its full credit. It's certainly one which I'm happy to have in my collection. Hopefully when you hear it for yourself, you might agree with me. And again, if you agree or disagree, be nice if you can leave a comment down below in the section below, in the comment section, so everyone else in the community who watches this video at least knows your perspective on stuff as well. So that's going to be the first album today. It's Yoki Jazz by the Yoki Fren Sextet, and again it's a 1964 original release. Okay, so that's the first one today. I think that's a cracking start, that album. So I've just got to move my pages on my notes. The second album today, I had seen in the wilderness for quite some time, and I didn't pull the trigger for whatever reason. I think it was to do with the initial retail price, and I just played the game of, I'll wait for it to come down in price. I know I want it, but I'm going to wait for it to reduce in price to a level where I'm completely happy to buy it. And I did so eventually. As you may know, if you are a regular viewer of this channel, there's certain places in the world where I like their output of jazz. One of which, well, in fact, I've got two good examples today. This is the first of which, and this is a lovely slice of Japanese jazz. This album I'm going to be showing you is a 1984 release, and it's by a group called the Shintaro Quintet, and the actual album's entitled Evolution. There you go. Yeah, an interesting cover. I quite like that. I'm not sure what it's got to do with, anyway, yeah. Right, loads to be reading, as you can see, and there's the reverse side of it. Yep, lovely packaging, I say, for the first two albums. Absolutely lovely packaging, put together. You know, vinyl isn't cheap at the moment, so when you do get your vinyl packaged in such a way, it just makes you feel a bit better about the purchase. Certainly I do anyway. So let's go over some of my notes for this particular album. A compelling journey through the imagination of Mr. Nakamura. And I put noteworthy things to point out. Jeff Jenkins on piano and Shunzo Ono on trumpet. Excellent performances on this particular album from both men. I mean, really standout musicianship. It's what jazz is all about, type of thing, from my point of view anyway. So again, really happy to have this in my collection. The album, the overall themes or style, a mixture of both hard bop and modal. I've written, and I'm kind of like surprised I've said this, but you know, I'm not willing to take it back at this stage. In terms of consistency, this might be the best Japanese jazz album, full stop, that I own. So there is a caveat in there in terms of, I'm not just saying it's just the best Japanese jazz album it ever to exist type thing. I'm not going that far, but I'm saying in terms of my collection and what I have in terms of jazz vinyl, this might be the most rich, consistent in terms of not only compositions but musicianship Japanese jazz album that I'm aware of and like and own. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be other stuff out there that I've as of yet haven't discovered yet, but as soon as I do, if it's in, you know, if it's certainly got the sound that I like and it's not obscenely, you know, expensive, I'm gonna get it. So that's just how I am. I've also put there are moments which are simply breathtaking. So yeah, it's okay, fair enough. Just trying to think of, yeah, so what I'm going to do is, I didn't put in my notes. Oh, in fact I did. Let's just see. Yeah, I've nominated Evolution, the track Evolution, the title track from this album, for you to have a listen to for yourself. The link is going to be down below, so you can hear it for yourself, see what you think. But I would strongly advise, well, with all the albums today, this one kind of like, in particular, have a listen to the entire content and see if it works for you, see if it's, you know, it fits into your collection. It's, you know, certainly welcome in my one. I'm really happy to have it, not only as a piece of Japanese jazz, but just really good jazz, full stop. So yeah, it's really strong recommendation for this one. So that is again the Shintaro Quintet. The album's entitled Evolution, and it's a 1984 release. Right, that's the second album. This third album, we're going to go a bit off script here. I personally really like it, hence why I've got it. You may not feel the same, so yeah, you might think I give it a rating higher than what it deserves. If you do feel that way, please comment down below, or if you agree with me that it's, you know, it's a meritorious album, body of work, then again, comment section down below. So this third album is a 1974 release. And it's by a gentleman called Robert Rockwell III. Again, I just like every part of this album, just like amuses me, and you know, puts a smile on my face. And yeah, that's worth the entrance fee alone, you know what I mean? The world being what it is, and you know, quite a bit of misery type thing. When something does put a smile on your face, you tend to like, hey, I got like, you know, so much affection towards it. The actual album's entitled Androids, and let me show you the cover. So it's got that kind of, yeah, that era. Yeah, that particular era had a lot of covers in this particular style. This is one of the better ones, to be quite honest. I'm just trying to think in terms of my collection. Yeah, this, if you're going to do the illustration covers, title covers, this is, yeah, I definitely feel this is one of the better and more interesting ones. So there you go. Can I show you the reverse side of it? Yeah, I think I did. There you go. So let's read some of my notes and see what I've got to say for myself. So Robert Rockwell III, a US saxophonist and composer. The overall styles of this particular album are free jazz, jazz funk, and jazz fusion. The notable on there is Bobby Lyle, the musician Bobby Lyle, who's got his own back catalogue of, you know what, really decent tracks. Here he's in the capacity of well, he's got the responsibility of piano playing, and he does a really good job on this particular album. There's no doubts about it. So what I've written is, once a composition gets going, wow, some of these tunes hit like a hammer. Yeah, I really did. Certainly my initial listening to the album, I was immediately drawn to it and fascinated by the actual overall sound. It's not entirely unique, but it comes up seldom enough in jazz that it's noteworthy. So, but you might, in your experience, your journey through music and jazz, you might have come at things from a completely different angle, where this is more familiar sound to you than it was to me. But I certainly loved it. Anything with a kind of like space aged kind of sound in jazz kind of fascinates me. So yeah, I've written, does a similar trick to Lloyd Miller, opening section of any composition, which will be 1 or 2 minutes long, may or no. Yeah, so Lloyd Miller does this thing where when he's dealing with Eastern music, he will go for a 2-minute preamble of a traditional sound, and you may or may not like it, and then after that 2 minutes it kicks into his kind of like hybrid of Western and whatever his focus is at this time, and let's say it's Middle Eastern. It will switch after the 2 minutes into something I certainly find more palatable and want to hear, rather than the opening 2 minutes. So Robert Rockwell does a similar thing where you get a preamble at each track, which will put off quite a few people, but if you can work past it, the track seems to unfurl like a delicate flower, and it becomes something else, and something that I actually like. So yeah, just watch out for that trick when you are listening to this album. Yeah, so then the track only wakes up, drives hard at you, interesting layering. I've written, I ain't gonna lie, I thoroughly enjoyed this album. I can see this being on high rotation within the collection. Yeah, high rotation in my collection, as it currently is, means that if you get played more than, like, you know, once every 3 months, then you've done pretty well. And yeah, I've listened to this quite a bit since I've got it, and yeah, it's I say the first 3 times of listening to it, I put it on a really high level, and as I listened to it the 4th and 5th time, it came down a bit because of my enthusiasm and my desire and ability to kind of like compare and contrast with other jazz albums, similar yet and dissimilar, kind of like brought it down, you know, from its really high standing, which wasn't the correct positioning for it, to a more reasonable and understandable, yeah, this is your level really. But yeah, it's I really just enjoyed this album. It's something different, which is always good as far as I'm concerned. Something different, something compelling, and I wanted more. So I'm going to leave a track down below for you to have a listen to. I think I'm going to use the track On the Edge, and have a listen to it for yourself, see what you think. But do be mindful of the first 2 minutes of it, because you may not like those bits, but it will warm up, I can assure you. So I think it was reasonable money for this one. All of the albums today, you should be able to get yourself, if you so choose, you should be able to get them relatively easy. I wouldn't be surprised. And in terms of like price ranges, most of them are coming in at like tone poet type money for them. So you will decide whether or not you think it's worth it for your, you know, by way of your taste, what you got in your collection and how you would like your collection to look in the future. So you'll have to decide if it's worth it in that respect. Certainly for me, it was, because it's been a really fun journey. So that's the third album today. All right, let me change my... Got to find other notes. Oh, there you go. The fourth album today. Like I said, I've got a particular thing about jazz from different regions of the world and their interpretation of, you know, because they've been influenced obviously by US jazz, and then they, you know, they do their own kind of home interpretations of what they think the jazz sound should be. And yeah, I just always find that fascinating. So yeah, this is a good example of it. And as I said, there's certain regions of the world where I really do enjoy their jazz output, and one of these is Poland. So let's just get on with it. So Jazz Carriers, and the album's entitled Carry On. It's a 1975 release, this particular one. Show you that. Yeah, I'll show you that again. Yeah, like I said, it's I've got a soft spot for Polish jazz, and like I said, if you've seen previous videos, you'll come to realize quite quickly that yeah, I got a thing about it. It's a slight obsession, let's put it that way. I put in my notes, glad to have this in my collection, but in all honesty, I would not consider this a top tier jazz album due to the lack of consistency and I put in brackets in the compositional sense. So yeah, it's this was certainly it was a more impulsive buy in terms of I'm going to be like honest. I'd say probably of the 7 tracks on here, only 3 of which floated my boat. But for me and the price range that this was a kind of like, it's more than tone poet's money for this. Yeah, but for those 3 tracks, and it's already inbuilt in me the difficulty in getting my hands on Polish jazz anyway, good copies of it. So I'm willing to pay a premium for that type of album. And yeah, it's for the 3 tracks that I really like, I was willing to pay it. You may not feel the same, to be quite honest. You might. I'm going to leave a link down to the track that I think is the main track on here. You might just think to yourself, well, it's all right, you know, but if you knew how much I paid for it, then you go like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. So I can totally understand that. So the track that I'm probably going to be using from here is called Mala No, I'm not going to try and pronounce it any better than that. And I think the English translation is minor seventh. I think so. I could be wrong. But yeah, I enjoyed, yeah, the three tracks that I really enjoyed on here, I really did enjoy. Yeah, it's that typical Eastern European jazz sound. I say typical in the kind of the most general sense. French jazz sounds different from, you know, Scandinavian jazz, which sounds different from Polish jazz, which sounds different from English jazz. So yeah, it's, to give a blanket statement wouldn't be wholly fair, but from the region of Eastern Europe, particularly in jazz, where they have a strong and long tradition of really imaginative jazz, this is a welcome addition to my collection. I've just got a suspicion that buying it now probably was the best option, because the prices are always going to go up in terms of, yeah, I've just got that feeling about it. I've got, you know, no real evidence to support it, but I've just got like the notion that this might be in time to come, this might be a really hard album to get hold of. But like I said, I've got no proof about that. I just have that feeling, hence why I was willing to spend more than I perhaps would on a jazz album which has only got 3 good tracks on it. But hey, you know what? The funny thing is, I say that, and I try to make it sound like I'm quite sensible, but I'm not, because I know damn well that there's many an album in my collection where I've spent way over the odds for it, for what it is. But I just wanted it. I wanted a vinyl version of this particular tune, album, whatever. So yeah, I am lying to myself. To quite a great extent there, because I will pull the trigger. If it could be one track, and I'll do it if I want that track enough. Okay, that was the 4th album today. Let's get to the 5th one. Let me find my notes. So yes, the fifth album today is a 1985 release. It's by a gentleman called Larry Douglas, and it's his Altet, and the album's entitled Dedications. Yeah. Yeah, as album covers go, it's one of those ones where once you've seen it, and you probably won't forget it from that point onwards. Yeah, I quite like that group photo. Yeah. So let's see what I've written about it. So overall, this is, although it's got jazz elements in it, it's a jazz funk fusion stroke jazz album. It's not just straight jazz. So for those who don't like the fusion side of things, this album might not be to your taste. But there's going to be 1 or 2 tracks on there which are to your taste. It's just that the overall arch of the album may not necessarily float your boat. So I'm just reading some of my notes. No apology, this album hits hard, powerful, robust and lively. Not strictly an all-out jazz album, some wild funky stuff, so mileage will vary. I appreciate what Mr. Douglas is trying to do here. It's far from a perfect album, but I like and respect it regardless. Yeah, that can happen on jazz albums quite easily, and the more I know about it, you know, become aware, my knowledge base of jazz is improving, the more that I'm willing to kind of like accept that you can get albums which are not necessarily the genre that you're interested in, but you can get tracks off that album which are every bit to your taste as you could ever possibly want. You just got to kind of make that choice, like, just, you know, this is not a jazz album as such, it's something else, but I like it enough. There's enough great tunes on there for me to, like, you know, just hit the purchase button, and that's exactly what I did. Let's see. Oh, I made a note. There's a gentleman called. So why is he? Why can't I see? Yeah, Eric Vaughan, who's on piano for this album, did an absolutely fantastic job. Kept me engaged the whole time I was listening to this album. I have written imaginative compositions. 3 of the 6 tracks had my interest. Yeah, so 50%. That's not bad, one for me. Anyway. The Larry Douglas Altet, Dedications, 1985. I'm going to leave a link down below. The track that I'm probably going to use is a track called Traces. Hopefully you're going to like it. If you do, check out the rest of the album, see what you think, see if it's going to fit in your collection, and let me know in the comment section whether or not you agree or disagree with my assessment of it. Right, let's get to the 6th album. Oh, there you go. This is one of my more recent acquisitions, and really glad to have got hold of this, because again, it's part of my nature. Part of what I like doing is trying to, I want a collection of jazz vinyl which is unique to me as much as it can be, to be quite honest. But the whole point is, I don't want the same, 1,000 albums that everybody else has got, type of thing. It's like I want something else. To me, there's no point really in. Well, it's up to each individual. I can only talk from a personal standpoint. What you choose to do is entirely up to you. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. But for me, my collection, I think I want it to represent my personality, my kind of like hopes and dreams and aspiration type thing. So I tend to, as I said, I tend to stay away from the jazz albums that everybody else seems to be, hyping up. I'm looking for something different, and my collection reflects that. And this particular album I'm going to show you, gosh, that was quite a preamble, is a really good example of it. So this is a 1981 I think a 1981 release. Okay, and it's by Jessica Jennifer Williams, and the album's entitled Organomic Music. There you go. I'll show you that cover. Yeah, I like it. It's minimalist. Show you it inside. Quite a bit to read there. Let's show you the reverse side. Lovely jubbly. Yeah, I was nicely surprised with this album. Let's just have a look at some of my notes about it. Notables: Eddie Henderson on trumpet and flugelhorn. Yeah, Eddie Henderson. Yeah. Anyway. While I wouldn't say that I enjoyed the entirety of this album, I very much respect it. It's an album that seamlessly transitions between genres within jazz, let's say from bop to modal. I've also kind of written, I've always been a sucker for engaging piano jazz. This album is a very welcome addition to my collection. Yeah, can't dispute that. I've never heard of Miss Williams prior to purchasing this album. I will certainly be making an effort to listen to the rest of her back catalogues. Yeah, it's so when you do a little bit of research about Miss Williams, you quickly discover that she's a classically trained pianist, and you can hear that. It's kind of who's the Joanne Brackeen. So it's the same kind of background as her, went to conservatoire and all that kind of stuff, but obviously had jazz leanings as well. Now, whereas if I was to compare and contrast the Brackeen, Joanne Brackeen versus the Snooze album compared to this, the Snooze album is difficult jazz. It really is. It's not for the faint-hearted. This one is far more accessible, but I've got to say, her piano work is unbelievable on this one. It's a style of her own. It's got inflection and tonality where it's definitely unique to the individual, and that's what I find fascinating, and that's what I'm interested in terms of listening to music. I want to be fascinated by what somebody's doing. So yeah. Now there are 14 tracks on this particular album. I think there's too many. I mean, usually I'm probably the last person to say something, you know, seemingly as mad as that. I think there's enough content on there which should have been spread over 2 albums, and you would have had one really good album, and then you would have had one kind of like so-so album. And I think they should have done it that way. But you know, more tracks for the money. Yeah, but you can't just think of it. Yeah, I know I'm kind of fighting against that idea of just saying, well, the amount of tracks for how much you purchased the album for, surely that represents value for money. Yes and no, because if I didn't like the additional number of tracks anyway, then it's pointless. So I see kind of like where my inner kind of turmoil and conflict is coming from. But just as a simple example of how many flavors of jazz there are out there, this is a really good example of when you let creativity do its own thing. This is the kind of product that you can end up with, and it truly is a worthy album, and I am really, really glad to have it in my collection. I'm not going to lie, it may not eventually, you know, in all reality get the airtime or turntable time that other albums will get, but I'm always going to remember that I own this album and how much I like elements from it. So yeah, I would say this is probably not for the beginner in jazz. I would say for the intermediate to expert level. And it's not by way of like how complex the compositions are. It's just, you kind of got to hear a whole, you know, slew of jazz first before you kind of get the point of what's going on here. So yeah, definitely interested, really glad to have it in my collection. And like I said, you should be able to get hold of it if you are so interested. I'm going to leave a link to one of the tracks below. I'm probably going to use the track The Demise of an Armored Man. I'll either use that track or one called Cresselville. One or other of those tracks will be used, I think, as a demonstration, and if I can't get those individual tracks, I'll just give you the whole album and you can listen to it for yourself. But be aware, when you listen to the whole album, the mileage is going to vary in terms of what you already like in jazz, and whether it's reinforced, that particular taste of yours is represented on this album. And if it is, you're probably going to like, you know, her compositions in that particular type of jazz. But if not, you know, just move on type thing. But yeah, I'm really happy to have it. Yeah, just like one of those things, like I said, it's kind of like, I really do like introducing new musicians to my collection. Like I said, I'm slightly different from everybody else, and I'm not saying I'm better, I'm just saying I'm just being me. I'm not a completionist in the sense of I want the entire back catalogue of Miles Davis, all first pressings. I'm not necessarily interested in that. I want to find, you know, those artists who've done really small runs of jazz albums and it's kind of like been forgotten about for 30-40 years, and you know, it's that whole rediscovery thing is really where my interest lies. That's where I find jazz treasure, so to speak. So that was the 6th album today. Let's see if I can find go through my notes to find the 7th. Yeah, I found that quite quickly. The 7th one today, let's have a quick look in, is a 1975/1976. There seems to be some kind of dispute about that. Jazz album by the Romanian pianist and composer Paul Vanner. Probably doesn't have that accent. That's more of a German accent. Well, an attempt at a German accent. But yeah, being Romanian, I'm sure that's not. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's the. I like that cover, I must admit, and that's the reverse side. Yeah, but I really like that cover. Yeah, if I could have that framed, I'd be really quite happy with that. Anyway, let's move on. So, so in my notes I've written a deliberately beautiful canvas, dreamy, beautiful, charming, innocent. Yeah, this is it's a departure from quite a bit of the other jazz that I actually happen to have in my collection. But it's not a case of it's out there, it's like an outlier that I don't have other bits and pieces like this. I certainly do. Think of this more towards the kind of lounge side of jazz. So jazz club, live performances in jazz club type music, type of jazz. That's where it's at. Some people call it, I don't really like the term, but elevator music, and that's doing this a disservice. It really is. But in the general, for the people who don't really follow jazz, lounge, elevator music might be the way that they would describe it. So wonderfully realized, oh yeah, so easygoing compositions. So yeah, one of the tricks on this album is the compositions themselves are original, but they're very familiar. So there is elements within those compositions which I've heard in other tracks, whether they're jazz or not is kind of like irrespective, but there is automatically a kind of familiarity. Even though you'd be hearing some of these tracks for the first time, there is components in them which your mind already kind of anticipates. So yeah, I liked it anyway. I put in, that's not to say whether these compositions are not without complexity. This album could be played to pretty much anyone, even those who aren't into music. And I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. It's unique in the sense of not all jazz can be played to anybody. You know, sometimes you got to pick your kind of candidate for it. You know, I mean, somebody who expresses an interest in music and maybe, you know, flitters with the idea of jazz. But certainly, this is one of those albums that you can just put on and leave, and it's not just background. It really depends on what you're like as a person. But I assume, seeing as you're here, you're interested in listening to music and jazz. You actively listen. So though it can be just put on and played from beginning to end, and it will work for the majority of people, there is more than enough on there to pique the interest of those who have got more kind of like selective tastes in music, in this case jazz. There is enough on there for you to be entertained by. I don't think there's any doubts about that. So I adore 4 of the 8 tracks. Album will get a higher rating if confined to tracks on side A only. Yeah, so it's, yeah, so maybe they could have made an EP of it rather than an 8-track album, just for keeping up their standards, the high standards which are obviously on show. That's not to take away from the album. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know what the Carverture de Jazz, something of jazz, carnivore of jazz, maybe that might, yeah, I should have translated it, but maybe that's what it means. But yeah, so Paul Vanner, Spiral, Paul Vanner, and it's a 1975/76 release. So I'm going to leave a link down below. The track that I made, not entirely sure which track I'm going to be using from this particular album. I figure it out at the last moment, but I've got no doubts that you're going to enjoy this. You really are, once you hear it for yourself, and you know, just listen to it in isolation, and yeah, see what you think. So what I'm going to do is briefly do a pause here, because I can see that the memory card is at a certain point. So if I stop it now, we can do like a really clunky editing cut and do the part 2. So give me a couple of seconds. So we're back again. Yes, I tried to preempt the memory card, so hopefully that's worked. And yes, let's get to the 8th track in today's roundup. So the next album is a, let's see what year it came out. It looks like 1983, and it's Sam Sanders, the saxophonist, and this is one of, he does solo work, but this is one of his offshoots, the Sam Sanders and Visions, and the album's entitled The Gift of Love. Yeah, I like that. Right, cover. Yeah, very simple affair. Let's show you the reverse side. There you go. Yeah, this album, yes, let's just go through some of my thoughts about it, but there is something important to tell you about it. Yes, I've written in my notes, never judge a book by its cover. Very apt statement. Despite appearances, this is a highly sophisticated jazz album, and yeah, it is. There's no doubt about that. I really enjoyed the way the compositions were played with vim and vigor. Seriously, when this album gets up and running, lordy, it's something to behold. And I've put in question marks, elite level. I think when I was listening to this album, I was thinking, all things being equal, is, sorry, I just got to turn my back for a second because I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, Max Roach's Members Don't Get Weary album, I was put into a similar, and I rate that album. That album's just mad good. And I was kind of listening to this Sam Sanders album. I was put into, I was pondering whether, if all things were equal, would these albums be considered to operate on exactly the same level? Because I think objectively, when you listen to both albums and you take away who the consensus says is the better artist and just take it at, you know, face value type thing, is this Sam Sanders and Visions album, The Gift of Love, is it to the same level as Max Roach's Members, I keep forgetting the title of it, Members Don't Get Weary. Yeah, I'm still pondering that one, because I think it's quite close. Yeah, so an absolutely fabulous album. I think, you know, it's as near to elite level album as I can think of. I might change my mind in you know, time to come, but certainly from my knowing of its existence to this point now, it's like I really do put this album up there. I think it's a force of nature, this one. So I've also oh yeah. So one thing to tell you about, and I think it's extremely important, it's like a public service announcement. This album, as much as I love it, there is a problem, and it's not to do with like the album in and of itself. It's to do with the pressing that the individual pressing that I have in my hand. And you go, Lewis, pray tell, what's the problem? So you may see on discussion boards, you may see it, or anybody who leaves a comment about this album who's got this, this current repress, they will tell you that there is a fundamental problem, and the problem is that whether you hear it, if this is the kind of the first time you've discovered it, when you listen to it either through streaming or CD or vinyl copy, there's one of the better tracks on here, which is, I'm going to leave a link to it anyway because I just love the track. It's Unstable, it's called. There is a fault with the pressing, as in it, I'm not sure if it's on the master tape or not, or it's part of the kind of print. Sorry, I just don't know how it went wrong, because I don't know how it passed kind of quality control. I don't know how it did that, because it seems I've heard not only pre this version coming out, I've heard like older YouTube videos where you hear the how it's supposed to sound, and then when you hear this one, there are distinct clicks in there, or warped. There's something warped in there, and why I say it's warped is when you use your kind of like on your vinyl platter, if you put one of the actual weights on top of the vinyl, it does flatten out some of the inconsistencies. It doesn't do a perfect job, but it will flatten it out. So I'm thinking to myself, well, is that an individual vinyl problem, or is that a mastering problem, or something else? Because I've heard the same fault on the vinyl is on the kind of like the CD stroke streaming versions of it that I've heard as well for the same track also have that same fault. So yeah, it's weird how it passed quality control. So if you're going to buy this album, it took me 15 minutes to basically say to you, if you want this album, try and seek out the original version. The original version is going to be expensive anyway, but try and seek that out, because if you're a bit OCD, I'm slightly relaxed, but I am annoyed about this. But if you're, if you know you're that person who wants absolutely perfect vinyl each and every time, and you are the type of person who will send items back and say to them, no, give me a copy which is not like, is a perfect copy, that's what I paid for. If you're that type of person, you might want to stay away from this and wait for another repress to come out, and it'll probably be 10 years, but that won't bother you, because it just won't. But if you are going to buy this, and I think it's the Mad, let's have a look at, see, I'll try and tell you which. Yeah, Mad About Records released this version, and that's the version which has the actual issue, not the original pressing, not earlier copies of. It's this one specific Mad About Records version where there seems to be a fault. Now, I'm not going to really slaughter Mad About Records, because even in this roundup today, there's 2 or 3 from that label. Now, I don't work from them or anything. It just turned out that way, that what they had released, in recent times, I thoroughly enjoyed. So I think there's about 3 or 4 from what I'm showing you today come from that record label, that record pressing label. So yeah, just be mindful of that. But in the album in and of itself, this is absolutely fantastic. Chef's kiss. It really is. It's the Vickers kneecap, you know what I mean? It's every, yeah, I just really happy to have it. I just wish it was a bit of vinyl. But then again, there's part of me what kind of thinks, well, vinyl is an imperfect format. You kind of accept that when you're into vinyl, that stuff doesn't always go to plan. But but then the other part of me thinks, well, the price that you're paying for this, surely they must, why it wasn't quality control in place, you know what I mean? How did this get out onto the open market? And even on the official website, for the Mad About Records, when you hear their version of the track, it's got the fault in it as well, and nobody seems to have picked it up. So, or they're not saying anything. Anyway, oh, I've just seen something. I just didn't even realise that the jazz, is that Kenny Cox? Yeah, I think Kenny Cox, the jazz pianist, is on there as well. There's like one track on there. But anyway, that's enough preamble with this particular album. Thoroughly liked it. No, not just liked it. Where this is going to be positioned in my on my shelves is going to be interesting going forward, because I don't necessarily do alphabetical order or whatever. I tend to do like in order of sophistication type thing. So on one extreme you've got the more lightweight, more commercial stuff, the more kind of accessible stuff, and then on the other part of my collection it's got what I consider to be the hard jazz, the difficult jazz, or like the top tier of jazz in my collection, what I consider to be top tier. I think this is going to be gravitating towards the top tier end of my collection, and that's where I think it's going to be positioned within it. Yeah, I chef's kiss. Sort out that problem with the actual, you know, whether it's a vinyl pressing, I don't know, but yeah, just get yourself a copy of this, at least listen to the album and see if you agree with me that if this is a top tier jazz album, which I truly do believe it is. Right, that was the 8th album. Right, let's find the notes for the, oh, that was easy. Right, 2 to go. Right, the next one, because I like to mix things up, I don't, you know, I give you a bit of Polish jazz, give you a bit of Japanese jazz. Of course, I can, you know, I've given you some Romanian jazz today. You know, don't say I don't do anything for you. The album I'm going to show you today, at this moment, is a 1971 release, and it's by two gentlemen, John Sermon and John Warren. And this jazz album is entitled The Tales of the Algonquin. Algonquin. There you go. And let's just show you the reverse. There you go. So, may have been last video or the video before that, I showed you Ken Wheeler's Don Quixote album, and I raved about how good it is, and you know, for the reasons that it's got a different flavor to everything else, you know what I mean, what the normal tradition of jazz is. It's an offshoot which does its own thing, exists on its own merit, and it has a quality and a voice and an execution which I just found completely mesmerizing. This goes into the same category, and I think by listening to one, it influenced my decision to buy the other. So yeah, so British jazz at its finest. Again, just like the Don Quixote one by Ken Wheeler, it's overarching, it has an overarching concept, and certainly by the imagery here, you know what, that artwork reminds me of, oh gosh, I wish I had one of my art books around here. There's kind of like, I think he might be a Flemish or something like that artist, and a lot of his artwork have the macabre in there, and I just can't think of what the artist's name, but it's from, like, you know, 400 years ago kind of thing, that kind of a date. I just can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, in these paintings you got the kind of like scenes, not scenes, but I think there's one famous one where like the devils descend on the village type thing, and it's like you can see, I haven't seen it in real life, but as you can see in the painting, you can see people just getting like decapitated, and all sorts of demons walking around and all sorts of things. I just can't, yeah, anyway, this imagery here reminds me of the same artist. I just wish I just knew. Does it say on the back of here who did it? No, it doesn't say who the artwork's on the front. Anyway, so as a piece of jazz, let's just get into that before we do anything else. The scale and scope of this piece of British jazz is truly something to behold. A mixture of 60s cool, modal and big band. Thoroughly enjoyed this journey in jazz and would pretty much recommend it to anybody who shows any interest in jazz. And yeah, that's what I think one of the really strong callings of this album is. If you try and take your biases out of the picture and not just go, oh, well, jazz can only really come from the US type thing, or it's got to have these kind of like X, Y, and Z in there before I consider it jazz. This kind of does rip up the rule book and just go like, I don't care what came before me. I'm doing this. And they execute it with such passion, such... It just astounds me the level of creativity what brought this album to existence. I really, you know, I'm just befuddled by it. One of the handful of jazz albums which deliver on their original concept. Absolutely magnificent. A welcome addition to my blossoming English jazz section of my collection. Yeah, so a lot of British jazz, I can't stand it, to be fair. But ones which tend to have concepts behind them, and let's just say in general terms, the ones which are conceptual jazz albums, I tend to like more. I get bored by certain eras of British jazz. It's like, nah, I'm not really into that. But this particular sound and its execution just absolutely just tore me up. So yeah, I really would say, if you definitely have a listen to it, probably listen to the whole thing, but if I can pick out one track on there, I will do. It might be with the track with Terry's help, maybe, or the Dandelion, maybe one of those two. I'll decide, yeah, when it comes down to it. Yeah, it's just my journey in jazz and in music in general, and what I hope to kind of achieve in it. It's not set in stone, but I just like quality pieces. I just do. I just think this is real quality, and it's like this should be more front and center when you compare it with other works of jazz, you know what I mean, which seem to get a free pass. And it's like there's all this material around and nobody's really advocating for them. No, you know, for this part of the jazz world, nobody's really actively going, hey, look, apart from me, of course, you know what I mean. No one else is doing it. So, but have a listen to it, see what you think. Hopefully it might be something that you, all right, even if you do it but you don't buy it, I want you to listen to it so that you have in your memory some fallback position of what else is out there in jazz. So even if you just do that, I think it's going to be more than beneficial to you. So again, the Tales of the Algonquin by John Sermon and John Warren, 1971, classic British jazz. Very happy, very happy. So the last album today, and you know, it's been an extensive list, you know what I mean? It's been, yeah, let's just see if I can find, what did I do with it? Oh, there it is. So yeah, we're at the last album today, and hopefully you've enjoyed what you've seen so far. Hopefully there's one or two that, or maybe three that you've never seen before. As I said, I'm going to leave links down below so you can hear these for yourself. If you agree, disagree, or if you have other suggestions for me or the rest of the community here, please put it in the comments section. We can all benefit from it. So yeah, that'd be most appreciated. So the last album today is a 1979 release. It's by a gentleman called George Coleman, and the actual album is entitled Amsterdam After Dark. So let me show you. There you go. That's the album cover. Yeah. So let's see what I've written about it. Oh, I said on initial listening to the album, you think you know where it's going, but your confidence is misplaced. Yeah, yeah. For those who are really like kind of really into jazz, you can hear certain sections of music and you can go, yeah, yeah, I'm, you know, super confident. I know what this album is going to sound like without hearing any more than 30 seconds of it. This album kind of will absolutely disrupt your confidence in what you think you know. Yeah, it's a mixture of soul, jazz, and bop. For sheer potential, this album could have occupied this. Yeah, again, it's like I've put this. I think at the time when I purchased it and listened to it again, like the just like what did I just do with the other album? Sorry, just me being an absolute. Yeah, just like the Sam Saunders, this George Coleman album actually took me by surprise in terms of how good it is. Again, it's like, well, why didn't I know of this existence of this? People who people I had gone to up until then, in terms of like who I assumed had much greater knowledge than I did in jazz. They're not mentioning these artists. They may have them in their collection, but they're not putting them front and center and saying, look, have a listen to this, this is really good type of thing. They're not doing that. Which I just don't understand. Once you've heard this album, you're going to go like, well, objectively speaking, it is really good. Unfortunately, yes, at least I've been reasonable there, in the sense of like I am saying this is absolutely astonishing album. It's maybe not as good as I take that back. It's not as good as the Sam Saunders, because I'm saying it's flirting with elite levels, but I'm not entirely convinced that it is. It at its best, it's getting there. It's kind of like you got to think of one of those kind of VU meter things that do that when you're playing music, and it's kind of like it's gone there and then it's come back again. It's not entirely consistent, but there's no shame in that, because there's very few truly elite level jazz albums. Elite, by its very nature, elite has got to be the best of the best of the best of the best. Therefore, you're always going to have small numbers in comparison to the total material that you've got access to. So I don't think it's any shame that it's kind of like flirting with the idea of being elite elite tier album, but it's kind of just falls short. There's no shame in that, because most jazz albums don't get nowhere near the elite level, and that doesn't mean that I don't like aspects of those albums. It just means that it's just really hard to do it. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, my experience with it, wholly enjoyable, very good. Maybe a B+ for this particular album, if you used to see it in that way. Have I written anything else about it? No. So yeah, I'm gonna leave. I'm not sure what track. Do I know which track I'm gonna? Oh, I do know. It's called New Arrival. So I'm gonna leave a link down below for a track for you to listen to. It's called New Arrival by George Coleman from this album. See what you think. If you like it, have a listen to the entirety of the album, and then decide from there whether or not you want to add it to your personal collection. So I'm sure this video is going to be over an hour. Do forgive me. Please don't moan when it's like, why is your video so long? And it's like, it's kind of like, be worried if your attention span can't pass an hour. Kind of be worried. Secondly, I do a video maybe once a month at best. It's not like I'm churning them out every other day type thing. So you know, be understanding, you know, be understanding that I'm not just putting content out there all the time. So in the scheme of things, although this one video is long, yeah, you don't have to put up with it. You know, it's not a thing that I'm doing all the time. Yes, I wanted to thank you so much for, yeah, just letting me meander about these 10 albums, you know, what I thought about them, why I bought them type thing. Very enjoyable. It took a while to get this together because it's kind of, there is a problem in the terms of the marketplace that there is material out there. I just don't necessarily want it. I don't want it for my collection, and I don't buy things just to show you guys on you know, on YouTube or wherever. I don't do that. I buy albums that I specifically want in my collection, and that's the way I always want it to be. So when you hear my kind of my general assessments of albums, know it's coming from a sincere place. I've got skin in the game because I spent my own money on it, rather than, you know, no shame on the people who get, you know, are connected enough to to receive albums for free. But I kind of think to myself, well, if you're getting it for free, you got no skin in the game apart from trying to make that person who gave you that freebie happy. But what if you don't like it? Then you still got to try and pretend it's better than what it is. So I'd rather cut all that nonsense out, buy what I like, only have what I like. You know, I'm never going to buy stuff that I don't like just to, you know, get content out of it by saying this is a rubbish album. I'd rather just not listen to it, to be quite honest. So thank you for being with me. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting down below. If you like that I'm doing the Lord's work in this particular, you know, by this method, please consider either donating to the channel via the thanks icon, and you have to be subscribed in order to see that, or you can donate via my PayPal. I think the PayPal, there's going to be a link in the description area or on the channel banner, where you'll be able to see my links to my Instagram page, as well as my PayPal account. Yeah, if there's any suggestions going forward in terms of, you've seen these 10 albums, you've kind of seen some of the other stuff that I've put out. If you've got suggestions for me for albums that you think I would like, please leave it in the comment section. I'll try and check them out. If they are available for me to purchase, and I agree with you that I really do like them, I will get them. So yeah, feel free, you know what I mean? I'm here to learn, you know, so I don't know everything. So yeah, if there's anybody out there who can help by providing some kind of, yeah, maybe some alternates, or, you know, another stepping stone in there, I'd be more than happy to not only hear it, but try and get hold of it as well, based on their recommendation. So until the next episode or next video, which I'm sure is going to go back to the usual format of 5 albums. Yeah, doing 10 in one go is is not easy. Yes, thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it. Do look after yourselves, stay safe, and I will see you for another video about jazz vinyl in the near future. It won't be as long as this video. All right, until then, look after yourselves. Take care. Bye bye.